Okay. So this is the presentation on animations. CSS animations, they give life to something on your page, or they give the appearance of movement. And in CSS, there's two main ways to create, to make things move. There's the transition property, and then there's animation plus property keyframes, or and keyframes, and they work together. Okay, so let's start with transition. This is the syntax right here, basically. So you declare an element, you declare a transition on an element on the page, and that'll be the thing that moves. This is going to be the thing that moves. Okay, and then the property, it's the property of the element you're going to animate. So if you're going to animate the background, changing maybe the color, or if you're going to do the border radius, like you're going to take a square and make it into a circle, or make it into an egg or something. Or you're going to translate Y, height or opacity, and translate moves things, okay? So it's the thing that you are operating on, and you can do more than one thing. You can transition more than one thing at a time. You can say transition all kinds of things at one time, or you can just list, okay, I only want background, and I want, you know, the border radius, or I want it to translate, I want to move. And then what you would do, instead of having this semicolon at the very end, is you would repeat these colors, but have a comma after this, and then repeat those, and then put a semicolon if there's only two, okay? So duration's obviously how long it's going to run. Ease, we know what that is. It's really the animation timing function, like how it answers the question, how is this transition distributed across time? So is you ease in, is it linear, kind of static throughout, or is it a cubic Bezier? Is that you know, you can kind of create your own with it's kind of like an arc, basically, that you can sit there and play with, and you can figure that out. And I have a website at the end of the page that you can go and check out this cubic Bezier thing. Hopefully I'm not saying it wrong too bad, I don't know. The delay is how long should this thing wait before the transition begins. So here's what it really looks like. Your element, you know, your div, your whatever, your box, whatever, transition, opacity, 300 milliseconds. We do things in milliseconds or seconds. And you can actually say 3.5 seconds or something like that. And then this is ease in and out, and that is the delay. Just hang on 1 second before you do that kind of thing. All right, so what things should we animate? Some things you don't make sense to animate at all, okay? So if you can't really animate display block to inline block, or position relative, or font family, okay? You can't, the things that you want to animate are things that have a visual change, right, you know, that you can see, okay? So animatable properties, okay? And so position being from one place to another, not position relative, okay? But position on the web page from one place to another is the kind of thing you want to do. You want to do scale, getting bigger, smaller, that kind of thing. Rotation and opacity, okay? So the properties to animate, there I have this link to what things are animatable. And it's a really good page. It tells you everything. It's really good. So most performant properties for animation: position, one place from the other, scale, rotation, and opacity. So these things don't cause a repaint of the elements or a reflow of the elements, which is very costly in performance. So these are very performant. There's a warning, I guess, from some gurus, Paul, Lewis, and Irish. If you animate anything else than these things, then you run the risk of not getting that silky smooth 60 frames per second look, okay? So animation and keyframes. Yeah, so we're done with the other one, but animation and keyframes are a pair. They don't work without each other. So let's explain the keyframe thing. It looks like this. Keyframes, and then you name it, and then you say from, and then the styles to, okay? I don't see it like this very much, but that's technically what it is, right? So here's real code. You could say my frames from height being 200 to going to 400 and background orange to pink, okay? So here's where I really see it, and it's the same thing but better, I think. Keyframes turn on Y, whatever. So in the 0, I want you to, you're starting out here with the rotate Y. In the end, I want you to make sure that it is 360 degrees, okay? So the cool thing about using 0 through 100% or percents on down is you can do a lot of them. So instead of having to from or from to, this kind of thing, you can have many different degrees or many different places, and I've used this a lot. And another cool thing that you can do is you can literally say, at 25% and at 75%, or you can put 2% on one thing at a particular position, and that will do it. Or you could do something like at 0% and 25%, I want it to be in the same position. Or actually, instead of forget about that, actually, let's just do it in the middle. Like, for instance, the first two move, and then you can say, at 33% and as well at like, you know, through 60%. And then just put the same number that you had for these two right here. And so it will, what it will do, it will pause. Okay, it'll be like, okay, I don't have to do anything for this little time period. And it will pause and look like you animated it twice. So that is kind of a cool thing that I've discovered. So I didn't really discover it, I was taught. I discovered it through someone teaching me in a video. So I got to give that credit. But anyways, animation and keyframes. Okay, so here's the element. Okay, so we saw the keyframe, and I'm going to tell you something that really caused me a lot of pain. The keyframe must be below where it's defined in the animation. Okay, for the element, it has to be. Okay, it must, because that's what. As soon as I moved it, it fixed everything. It took me, I wasted at least an hour on that, or worse, I don't know. But so here's the element. Here's all the different things. Okay, they're pretty self-explanatory, but the name part of it is, the name is what ties the animation to the keyframe. So this name has to be, these have to be the same, okay? So this, in real life, okay. So duration, and you can go through all the rest of this, but another thing you can do is, instead of, this is the shorthand version of doing this, and this is what I've seen mostly, but then when I saw them all spelled out, I kind of got kind of excited. So animation name is my frames. So you notice that animation here in my frames, it's just, it's the same thing. They're the same things. They're just spelled out so that you can literally put those in there. So let's see what else I have here. Okay, so triggering it, you can do it on a hover, which is a pseudo class. I've also seen the class of, active. And so you can trigger, like, if it's active, like if it becomes active, you could trigger like an opacity situation where then it either gets darker or gets lighter based on if it's an active element at that point. Another way you can trigger it is by changing the class. We've done this before, or you can add new elements. I'm not going to go into huge detail with this because it's been covered in it was a whole other topic that we really kind of covered those things, but here's the references. Let me show you some of the, okay, I'm just warning you, this is kind of messy. It's very messy. Actually, this is kind of, I struggled trying to do things that probably were above me, and then it just became a big mess. So here's my page. And let me start it again, because then you'll see all the goodies. I've got a slide-in text. I've got this scrolling text, which is kind of like, reminds me of a marquee. I have this bouncing text that reminds me of Pong. You can scroll down and you can scroll up. You don't necessarily have to have this this border on here or whatever, but I did just because I wanted to kind of know exactly where it was at. And then so then the next thing I did is I'm like, okay, I want to see what this really looks like with a ton of text, right? So and then how slow does it need to be for them to actually be able to read it, and all that kind of thing. And line spacing, you can mess with line spacing to make it so that the words are just spaced a little bit more apart, that they could read it better. So there's all of that, right? And then I started messing with rotating animations. I don't really find these to be so useful because honestly, I could, for this page, I could see myself maybe using this marquee and using this. I don't think I would use, and maybe using a scrolling text. I don't know how much I would use spinning animations on a real page, This you might want to use, like you want to use some sort of animation when people touch like a button or, and I wanted to add a button in here too. There's just so many things I wanted to do that it just takes so much time. And like I said, I kind of got myself into struggling around, but you want things to animate or change so that people are sure that okay, wait, did I click Pinterest? Did it send my email? Did it do these things I asked it to do? So that's kind of the reason why, and also it brings life to the page. It makes it more interesting. There's this word called sticky that I've learned that seems to be a buzzword with that. If you have a sticky website, it means that it's interesting and people will stay there. Okay, so to the code. Let me see here. Okay. Scrolling text. Okay, so here's another whole ball of wax I learned this week. All this WebKit, whatever, all these different things here, these are for the browser. It needs it to render. It's like a rendering engine for different browsers. And some of these things, it just depends on how old your browser is, right? I have this thing. It's called, can I use, I think it's that. Can I use it? Yeah. So you basically say, hey, transition, right? What browsers can I use it in? And it will tell you, like these, I found out that these little yellow things here are basically saying, hey, you need you need a Moz, whatever, you have to add that to the command in order for it to understand it. So that would be like CSS transitions, Firefox, if you had these particular versions of those browsers. And so you could look it all up by that way, which seems kind of laborious to me. Or another way I found was, actually kind of liked it. I think this is it. CSS animatable properties browser support. Okay, so this would say, you know, it just kind of tells you if you're whatever you're using and then what needs help and what doesn't. So now that we know that, going back to this, I'm going to pick a one that is a little easier to read because these are a mess. I was planning on taking some of this stuff out. One second. Let's do the scrolling one. Let's see. Let's figure out really fast which one that is. Maybe I had so much trouble with this because, like at first I didn't have any trouble with it. So it's example one. But it's number 13, so I'm like, is 13 unlucky? So example one. Here we go. So it's defined, let's see, transform, translate, 100%. Ignore that, and here's your animation. So animate me example one for 15 seconds. Make it go faster. Linear, which means consistent, and do it constantly, infinitely. Thank you very much. So you can ignore this because this is all WebKit and Mozilla, whatever, and we can really get down to the keyframes right here. This is example one. Example one, remember I said this has to match whatever you say in your animation, which I can't find the normal line. Here it is right here. Okay, has to match. That's how they're connected. And keyframes, you can define away your life with keyframes, but if you don't, have this animation thing, it's never going to go. Okay, so basically transform 100 or translate 100% from on transform, and then this is to negative 100%. So it's going, that makes it go in a different direction. So say, for instance, I wanted to switch this. That will make it go a different direction. I don't know if we even remember. See, now it's coming from this side, which I think is kind of dumb because you really read the other way, and you read this way, and how can you read backwards? So I don't know. That's probably why it was the way it was. So there's that. If you want to see these spinning ones, do you guys want to see the actual code for any of these things, or should I just end this?
No, I think I'm good. I did have more of a question as what you were saying on that. The percents, when you change them, how it'll slow down or whatever. I was trying to understand what you meant.
Well, this is the direction on the x-axis, okay? So I changed it and it went the other way. So like here, I don't know if I saved this, but you can see that now it's coming from here, the right, and going this way. See? Animation going this direction. This will change the direction if I go the other way. If I say like this, it's going to do the exact opposite. See? See how it's going the other way? Is that answering? Okay, so that was that percentage there, but what are you talking about?
Oh, there was like multiple lines with a percent, like 0%, 22%,
Oh, okay.
and
Okay, let me find you a better example. I have a really awesome example of that.
like that right there.
Like this.
Yeah. What?
This is from my page. Let's see, what page 9? Okay. So this is this my emoji guy? Let's see, it's a slider. Okay, this one's that one. I have another one like this too. Let me show you the emoji one. Like we've done this so much, like, and you know, like.
Just trying to figure out what the difference is for each percent or what they do.
I think it's 9. Is it 9? Okay. Yeah. So here's this emoji guy. Watch him really quick. Okay. So he goes off the page. Yeah, he's going to come back. And there he is. Okay.
Right.
So let's go into 9. And I did that all through, none of this is JavaScript. Okay. Did that all through just plain old CSS, I believe. So topic 8. Here, this has got to be 9, right? Why did I get lost in my own code? 9, topic 9. Okay. So this is this emoji guy, right? Slide emoji is what I called them. So animation name is slide emoji. And see, these got spelled out. This is a different spelling out way. I could have put this all in one line in shorthand, okay? But slide emoji, he's down here. And then these percents, at 0%, I want you to be at negative 400 pixels. Okay, and then at 25%, I want you to be 100%, and then 33, 150. And so I just kept changing these values at different points. This is what it's talking about is your
Like the overall transition?
Yeah, like
percent.
where are you going to be in completing this animation at what point in time? So it's slicing up time, basically.
That makes sense.
Okay, so if I click this, see how it came from so far this way? That's why it was negative 400, okay? See, he's coming seemingly way off the page, and now he left the page way off the page. So that's all done through these numbers, and you can just play with them. And what I learned from another guy that I saw is like he had a huge amount of text, and he wanted to make sure that it wasn't seen, so he did like negative 1,000 on the left, and it took it all the way far away, making sure that it was 1,000 pixels way far away, so no, you couldn't see it. And then it brought it in at whatever rate he wanted. So the best way to learn these different things is just to play with them, and you can just see how they work, because until you do, you really can't. And it's annoying. Like you want it to look good right away, but you have to figure out how it works. So, anyways, if there's not any other questions, I'm gonna probably stop this somewhere.
That answered mine. Thank you. That makes a lot more sense.